So, ladies and gentlemen, suppose a system admin has given you a file, usernames and passwords. Each line of the file contains within it a username and a password where the username and password are some letters and digits. And there's white space that may occur, say, after this colon of the username and after this colon of the password. And there's white space that could occur here after text 1. So right there in the middle. So ladies and gentlemen, give me a regular expression that, so the key thing here though is they're looking for cases where within this, you want to find cases where the username is identical to the password. So someone sloppily used the same username and password within, and therefore it's speed security. So how can I do this with the regular expression? How can I capture this occurrences of these repeated cases where it's repeated from username and password? Tell me some things that would appear in that regular expression. Okay. So will those have to appear in our regular expression? They will appear. We just won't really use what's there. We know what's there, but we need them as kind of waypoints, as kind of markers for where we are. So they need to appear in the expression. What else will appear in the expression? So I note that whatever's here, text 1, text 2, these consist of letters and digits. So what could I use to denote a letter and a digit? If I want to write an expression that contains all letters, any letter in lowercase, give me an expression. Okay, I hear 2 brackets and what in the middle of the brackets? A dash C. Yeah. Good. If I want to allow now for uppercase letters, capital A through capital Z. Okay. So the dash means anything in that. Okay. Okay. And if I want to allow numbers here, what could I do? 0 through 9, right? Okay, so that would be part of our expression. It turns out to be an easier way to denote this. Okay, now, if I just were to put that down, if I were to have username colon this expression just written out, what would I need after this expression to handle the full text 1? I'd need a okay, so how many, let's assume that it has to have at least one of these. Then I need a what after this? A plus. It could be 0, I need a star, right? So if I username colon this thing, and then space password colon this thing, would that recognize for me cases of repeats? Ladies and gentlemen? No. Why not? Yeah, be 2 separate ones. I have, for the username, I have food. For the password, I have bar. Would that be recognized? Yeah, it would be. So, so that's not gonna work. What's another problem with that? So in other words, what's another problem with doing just username colon this thing and then space password, and I won't write this out in all its glory, but the same thing here. What's the matter with what's another problem with doing that? One thing is it doesn't enforce that they're the same. Another thing? Yeah, exactly. Maybe there's 2 tabs in the middle. Maybe there's 3 spaces, or maybe there's a space after username, colon. Maybe there's a space after password, colon. Maybe there's a space even before the colon. You know, it's a nasty world out there, folks. And, you know, there can be odd numbers of spaces, and someone might not even notice it. So, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with this? Well, let me tell you this. \W matches a non-word character. In other words, a character that's not a word. And for many regular expressions, like \S will in fact denote white space. So you'd have to look for your particular program. So we could look for things, for example, where we have characters after this colon, for example, between the 2 and after this colon here. But the other thing I need is to be able to make sure this matches that. How do I do that? Okay, which sort of, we use the word bracket carefully in computer science, and there's a difference in a colloquial and a sort of strict definition. What do you mean by bracket? Okay, it's a parentheses. So we can put parentheses around what? Around what? We could put parentheses, ladies and gentlemen, around speak youths. So what does a parenthesis do? Remember I said early on in the lecture? One thing is it kind of groups these things, but it also does what? Yeah, remembers it. Like, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to see you too share elephantine characteristics in terms of memory. So you have the ability to recall those things. So we can put parentheses around text 1 to remember what was there. And then what would we do at text 2? What would we do over here to make use of that, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, it's \1. That will say, hey, use that thing that was remembered before and enforce it. So this is what we use, is \1. This is basically saying, hey, whatever was matched when you had this, the very first instance in this expression, which had these parentheses here, whatever was matched within those parentheses, the very first case of parentheses, in this case there's only one. This one has an underboard. Okay, fine. Whatever's matched in those parentheses, then I need to find that same thing here in password. After password. So the exact sequence of characters was matched there, we can match here. Ladies and gentlemen, long story short, this will work. So here, we're going to match cases where we have one string, so we have foo, and then we have another foo, for example, username me, password me. Username HAK449 and password HAK449, for example. Here we have a difference, and so it's actually not going to match this, but it will match that. Any questions on this expression? There's a lot going on. Matching sequence of any number of alphanumerics and underbars in a row with at least one. That means that any number is at least one or more of these. And then it's remembering that. Okay. Match it, remember it, and then when it uses \1, it says whatever was meant before, enforce that here. That's what I want to match again over here. So here we're able to match that. Why are we having this \W here? The plus, what is that saying? Yeah, it's allowing any non-word character to recur here one more time. But yeah, question.
Your \1 is that saying match it once or go to your first instance and then
correct. So it's the fact that it's \1 rather than \2 or \5. It's basically saying, whatever was matched by the first case of parentheses that were matched. There's only one case of parentheses here that are being matched. And so it's using that match.
But he not multiple, not negative.
You can have multiple here. Yeah, if you wanted to, if you had a longer expression, you might have multiple of these parentheses. You could use whatever was matched to the first one for here and repeat whatever was matched there over here, etc. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this matching of repeats is really useful. It's useful. It's a useful case. Where someone sloppily uses the same username password. But where it gets actually really valuable for you day to day is in replacements. So people here, I'm sure everyone in this room has used search and replace, Word, whatever text editor you use, what have you, LibreOffice. And what you can do is you can do search and replace with regular expressions. So you match this pattern, which can include these parentheses, and then you have a replacement which might refer to the contents of some of those parentheses, like \1, \2. And so you can replace a pattern by, text that comes from that pattern that was matched by that pattern and refer to that in your replacement string. So you don't have to replace it just by some fixed sequence of characters that's known ahead of time. For each match, it'll figure out what is \1 for that match, or \2 for that match, and in the replacement will substitute those. So that is an extremely useful thing when you are editing your document. You don't just do a find and replace with a fixed string in each. You do a find that is matching, and you do a replace that takes advantage of that matching. Okay? Okay, so that's useful. You should also know that \W matches a word character. So you actually don't have to write all this sort of ugly thing out. You can just write it as \W, lowercase w, \W matches non-words, okay? Okay, so that's all for today. Hopefully that should put you in good stead for your lab. We're going to be covering testing initially on Thursday. You'll find that useful for the lab. Thanks very much. And please drop off any comments you have on the lecture here.
So on Moodle, you have a site where Lab 5 you